What role should India play in this war? Will the Hormuz blockade, the Straits of Hormuz being affected, hit the economy, especially India's oil purchases? Is the Gulf losing the safe haven status that it has? Lots of questions to answer. Syed Akbaruddin, former permanent representative of India to the UN, someone who's worked across the region, including Saudi Arabia, including Iran. I appreciate Akbaruddin, you joining me. From an Indian perspective, you've heard the Prime Minister today reach out to different Gulf neighbors once again, Gulf countries once again, spoken to the King of Jordan, speaking to other affected countries. Do you believe that this outreach is the right way to do this, or should we be, in a way, calling out what some believe is now an unprovoked, unnecessary, disproportionate war that Israel and US are calling out? Why the reluctance to call out the US and Israel? Do you believe that's the right approach?
So thank you very much, Rajdeep, for having me on your show. So West Asia is not a distant theater for India. It's part of our proximate neighborhood, if I may say. For India, the Gulf is not a foreign policy file only. It's an economic and human security reality. Our energy flows, oil, LNG, LPG, aviation fuel, come from there in significant measure. So any increase in prices due to the closure of sea lanes will have an impact on our budgetary lines, on our bottom lines. And there's the safety of nearly 9 million Indians in the region, where we have a direct stake. So India's approach is not going to be a pure norms, values first posture. It's likely to be a more hedged norms posture. And the logic is pretty simple. Diplomacy must be calibrated rather than doctrinaire. So you see the way that we are responding. We are not doing it in a very manner of vocal symmetry. But in crisis, you speak first where your people and your economic interests lie and where they are most exposed. So calibrated diplomacy provides options and rhetoric closes them. So I'm not one for having a rhetorical approach.
So you're saying it was the right, because this has become part of domestic politics. The opposition, large sections of it, including Sonia Gandhi, interestingly today questioning why has the government been so silent on the assassination of a head of state like Ali Khamenei, someone who may have been anti-India in his positions on Kashmir, but at the end of the day is a head of state. That international rules demand that that you can't just take out a head of state with this kind of an external strike. That's immoral, illegal. How do you respond? Has India done the right thing by not openly condemning the US and Israel at any stage so far?
So Rajdeep, let's first acknowledge that our ties with Iran are historic, are traditional, and are deep. And many Indians feel a sense of civilizational affinity and strong cultural bonds with Iran. And of course, the killing of Iran's supreme leader in military strikes is seen by many as a grave breach of accepted norms. Now, what the government wants to answer, perhaps it'll answer for itself, because I'm not the spokesperson right now. I have no knowledge of the inner thinkings of the government. And as Mrs. Sonia Gandhi herself said, that perhaps the best place for this is to discuss it in Parliament. But that said, I think the important thing is for us to ensure that we prevent the next strike. And that is what matters, rather than condemning the last one. India is not there to win applause. It has to work to protect lives, its own interests. And the Ministry of External Affairs has already said that sovereignty and restraint and territorial integrity remain our core principles. But we have other priorities. So I think
but there
what
is,
the government has to say, it will say.
So to those who say that we've taken a picked side, we are veering closer and closer with every passing year or month towards the Israel US axis, that in a way limits our options. You don't agree with that. You believe that we are in a multi-aligned world, so we are having strong relations with the Gulf states. At the same time, we built this strong equation with Israel. You believe that's the way forward? Have we embraced Israel and the US to the extent that we have no strategic autonomy now in the region?
Rajdeep, engagement should not be confused with alignment. We need to separate the optics from the policy. Yes, the Prime Minister was in Israel a few days before the strikes took place, but that doesn't make India complicit in what followed. Critics, crises erupt between meetings. And if diplomacy meant endorsing every subsequent action of a partner, no country would maintain a relationship with anybody.
So you don't agree with the views expressed by some of my previous guests in earlier program that this visit was ill-timed in any way?
No, I don't think India can afford to be part of any bloc in West Asia. Our job is much more measured. It's much more focused, and we need narrow diplomacy for that. And that narrow diplomacy can only be if we keep all lines open, rather than think that we need applause lines. So it's easy for people to come on television and say that. But
right. So you're saying it would be unfair to say that the visit was ill-timed. We have to carry on engaging the Gulf states, UAE, for example. We are building a strong relationship and we continue to engage with Israel, and both are possible. They are not mutually exclusive. Am I correct? And Iran itself. Remember the Chabahar port. I mean, while Iran has been critical on India's position on Kashmir, for example, or Iran has been seen to echo almost Pakistan's position at times on Kashmir, the Chabahar port was an important access for us to Central Asia.
So, Rajdeep, I think government's actions should be judged by outcomes rather than look at it at the middle of a process or at the beginning of the process. What we need to see is, can India speak and engage with all sides? And that they have done. The Ministry of the External Affairs Minister has talked to his Iranian counterpart. Prime Minister has talked to all the leaders of the Gulf. The Ministry of External Affairs, in its first statement itself, said that for us, territorial integrity and sovereignty is important. So we need to see whether they're talking to all sides. Can they help in reducing the escalation risk? Can they protect our citizens? Can they ensure the economic lifelines? All this will require access, not alignment. And we need to judge India's policy by its results of whether the markets are steady, whether the Indians are safer, and whether a diplomatic off-ramp can be there and India can support that, rather than these applause lines that people come and say in public, because quiet diplomacy is also part of substantive diplomacy. We need to we need to put some brakes on this momentum of war and hyper talk.
No, I take your point. I take your point over quiet diplomacy prevailing over optics. But then when you go to Israel and are seen to be embracing it, almost calling it fatherland, do we have to be conscious that on the Arab street, or indeed even in an Iran, that will be seen very differently? Do we need to be conscious of that as well? That you can't be seen to be embracing Netanyahu at a time when he's reviled in large parts of West Asia, certainly on the street, if not by the leaderships.
So, Rajdeep, again, you're mixing up optics with substance. So, yes, what you say may be valid in some parts of the world, but I've served in the Gulf. Many of the Gulf states speak or sing from the same hymn sheet that the Israelis sing towards Iran. So let's not be thinking that, oh, the Arab street. And we know what the Arab street in the Gulf is, Rajdeep. So let's understand that our outcomes will be decided not on optics. And give the government a chance and space to work it out. And let's discuss this when Parliament convenes or when there is greater space, rather than putting every action under a magnifying glass and saying, oh, I could have done this better. Sure. Everybody can do this.
Finally, do you believe India is taken therefore seriously across the region, that because also of the large population that we have soft power across the region in countries like UAE again, because of the presence of so many Indian workers, that therefore we have a role to play?
So Rajdeep, when I first served in the Gulf, there were about 1 million Indians there. Today there are 10 million. Our economy, our trade with the Gulf was something like 2 or 3 billion totally, all the Gulf countries. Today, if you look at it, it's 170. Obviously, we are a major player there. People take us seriously. To be fair, also, India has invested a lot in deepening ties with the Gulf in an unprecedented manner. And that's not because of ideological affinity. It's because our interests have converged. And if interests converge, there are people who take each other seriously. And I think the India of today is certainly taken seriously in the Gulf. And let's see first the safety of our people and the economic ties are protected. Everything comes secondary to this.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, Syed Akbaruddin. You are a voice of reason amidst the noise around us. And obviously, in the difficult, polarized times we live in, to navigate with quiet diplomacy, not easy. We'll wait and see what the outcomes are. But for now, for joining me, thank you so much. Syed Akbaruddin, on what India's role could be as the war escalates.